Detroit Lions actually getting beat at home. I did not see that coming. I will be the first to admit it. But we had a lot of really good games, both pro and college. So I'll throw it back to you and say, what do you want to talk about on the sports side today?
Well, I think that when you look at the sports itself in the NFL and the playoffs, they're always just exciting as hell. And you never know. I mean, you got home field advantage. You've got this, you've got that, you've got a great record. And then you look at how things actually fall into place. And it's absolutely a magical thing. I mean, it's why the NFL is so damn good, John, because everybody's got a shot. And does it mean they're all going to win? No. Obviously, the Texans went out. They didn't win. But it sure is exciting to watch teams like Baltimore go head-to-head with somebody like Buffalo. Buffalo finally got over that hump, but they got the big hump left, John. They got to get over Kansas City, and that's been the nemesis, unfortunately, for a really great team and a great quarterback, and maybe this is the time. I was just going to hit this, though, John, because we talked about, wow, look at all these openings for head coaches around the NFL, and it happens every year, 6 or 7, maybe 8. Every single year. Well, a couple of them have filled, but the most important is your team, your Chicago Bears, went out. Now, here's who they interviewed, John. This will take just a second. Eddie George, Adam Stanovich, Brian Flores, Joe Brady, Todd Monken, Aaron Glenn, Pete Carroll, Mike McCarthy, Arthur Smith, David Shaw, Thomas Brown, Ron Rivera, Mike Kafla, Weaves, and then Petzling. That's who you guys looked at. You know who you hired? Probably the guy that was the first one you talked to, Ben Johnson. And for all the right reasons. He goes up to Detroit. He's young as can be, John, but I'll tell you what, he has a command of offense that I think is amazing. And all you've got to do is do one thing. Look at what he's done with Goff since Jared Goff got there with the Lions and what he's been able to do with the play calling, how he's made him a far better. This was the best year that Jared Goff has ever had as a quarterback in the NFL. So I think with that alone, and you're in the same division, but now you've got Caleb Williams, who I think that, a lot of people, including myself, you might not have liked certain things about his personality, but I'll tell you what, he's a good athlete. He can run and he can throw the football pretty well. So he's done a great job, but he needs a coach around him who's going to give him an offensive line and give him an opportunity to have success. I think this was an absolute no-brainer for the Chicago Bears to hire Ben Johnson. What about you? Was there anybody else that you would have preferred they hired? Because for me, I don't know, whoever gets Ben Johnson, if he went to Jacksonville, great. But he went to the Bears and the same division, which is kind of interesting. So this is going to be something over the next couple of years, John, where he's going to be going head-to-head against Dan Campbell, and that ought to be pretty interesting.
Yeah, no doubt. And the guy that you and I would have in our hearts, Pete, would be Ron Rivera.
Yeah.
And he's a former Bear player and a great coach at various situations, some of which were not the greatest for him. But look at what happened when they got rid of Ron in Carolina.
Yeah.
You can look at how Cam Newton's future just kind of vaporized at that point. I think he's the right guy, Pete. And for a change, the Bears signed him to a 6-year contract. I think he probably insisted on 2 things, one of which being a 6-year contract, not a 3 or 4-year deal like, sometimes the Bears do. I think there was almost no chance they were going to go after Belichick, Pete, because, again, the McCaskies throw around nickels like they're manhole covers. They'd have to, pay out $10 million. That's the buyout for his contract.
Yeah.
So there are a few people out there that'll do that, but not the McCaskies. And quite frankly, I think this guy's better for this young quarterback, Pete, than Bill Belichick would be. No disrespect to Bill Belichick. I just think this guy's a little tighter with a younger quarterback like this, Pete, than a 70-plus-year-old coach who's probably a little persnickety at this point in his career.
That'll be interesting down in North Carolina. And I don't know that it's over, John. I mean, whether it's the Raiders or anybody else, somebody might still go after Belichick. Who knows? Shoot. I mean, you got a guy like as old as Pete Carroll who's still bouncing around, and he wanted that Bears job. He just didn't get it. And I think they did the right thing, not going with a defensive guy and going with an offensive guy. And I think that's what, obviously for Ben Johnson, that was something that was going to be critical for that first pick quarterback that you've got last year, Caleb Williams. I think that's great. NCAA, John, Ohio State, they did win. The line was 8.5 last I saw. Ryan Day was asked to be fired. Everybody wanted to fire the guy, right? They lose to Michigan, and this guy, people wanted to hang him from the highest thing. I mean, absolutely crazy what people were talking about there. But as it turns out, maybe he's not so bad. He absolutely put the offense together and dominated. And that's why I go back and say, you know what? A rivalry game is a rivalry game for a reason. It's not because you win every single time you play them. That doesn't make a rivalry. It's the fact that it's a fist fight every time you get in there. And yeah, there's some blowouts here and there, but there's going to be times where the better team doesn't win. And that was the case this year where Michigan had the better of Ohio State, which makes it interesting. They also had the better, Ohio State had the better of Notre Dame. And they kind of jumped up pretty quick, John, in the first half. It was a fun game to watch. I think they just had so much talent and more talent than Notre Dame. Now, we all knew that going in. It's why the spread for the game was 8.5 points. But I will say this. I think when you look at the college football playoff as it was a success, I think the 12 teams worked out just fine. I think if I only have a pushback, and I think everybody has this same pushback, it might be about how the seeding is done and whether it's home fields and all the rest of it. So there's some tweaking they could do. Hell, they can tweak it however they want. And I think that they learned from this year, and I think that they will tweak it. But it was a great game, John, and the part that really changed in this game was who could run the football. Oh, there's a surprise. I've been saying that. You've been saying that for a long time. The team that can run the football, college or pro, it's the same in the NFL. Take a look at who's left. But the team that can run the football has a great opportunity to be somebody really special. And last night, all you had to do is watch Ohio State run for, 214 yards, John, averaging 5 a carry. Notre Dame had 53 yards, 2 yards a carry. That kind of says it all because the dominance running the football really changed that game. And Ohio State was really like a man amongst boys, I hate to say it, against Notre Dame. But Notre Dame gave it a shot, and they gave it a fight to the very end. They're not a quitting team. They got a great coach with Marcus Freeman. I thought the whole thing, I'm just curious what you think about the college football playoff, John, and do you agree that they need to do some tweaks? They don't need to add teams. They should stick with 12, in my opinion. But I think they need to tweak some of the things that we all were complaining about during this season.
Well, I could think of a bunch of tweaks, Pete, but we don't have enough time. And one I'll just start off with. I don't think there's an automatic in. In other words, if you win your conference or whatever, I don't think that means crap with some of these. Because look at how some of those schools won their playoff for their conference, and then they went out in the first round.
Yeah.
I think every single one of them, in fact. But for Ryan Day, Pete, I'm going to say, listen to this. I just pulled it up just so you could kind of get your head around it too. 2002, he's a tight ends coach at New Hampshire. 2003 and 4, he's a grad assistant at Boston College. 2005, he's a grad assistant under Urban Meyer at Florida. Then he's wide receiver coach in 2006 at Temple. 2007 through 11, he's the wide receiver coach at Boston College. This kind of lining up to be a head coach for you, Pete? I mean, again, I'm not putting him down, but listen to all these things. So then he's an offensive coordinator and wide receiver coach at Temple in 2012. 2013 and 14, he goes back to Boston College as the offensive coordinator. 2015, he's the quarterback coach for the Eagles. 2016, quarterback coach for the Niners. And then basically he goes to Ohio State as a quarterback coach and co-offensive coordinator in 2017, and he gets the head coaching job in 2019. That's an interesting resume, Pete, but it ain't quite the same as a lot of these coaches. And I think a lot of people just didn't think he was ready for this job. But obviously, except for Michigan, he does seem like the guy that's the right guy for the job. And good luck to you now, Ohio State. If any of those haters want him out now, there'd be schools out there clamoring to hire this guy, Pete.
Yeah, when you look at those offensive position coaching that he did, whether it's an O coordinator, quarterback, or wide receiver, what is Ohio State always known for? Wide receiver U, just like LSU. They always put wide receivers into the NFL. He's impressive with that side of it, the offensive coordinator side, the quarterback side. I mean, yeah, the critics are out there, John, and if you strip out the Michigan losses, his record is impeccable. I mean,
Yeah.
and even with those losses, his record is unbelievable. So the fact that they wanted to hang him from the highest tree is absolutely ridiculous. And again, as I said, the guy, he is the right guy for the right school, and they are seeing that. And any of these fans really need to back off in the future, I think. I mean, unless he does something awful, which we've seen some coaches do that, this guy's pretty damn impressive. You don't have to like him. I'm not a huge fan, quite honestly. But I will say, is he good? He's damn good. He might be one of the best college coaches in football right now.
Well, I would tend to think, Pete, that, again, if he became available, he would command high dollar at any school. And most of those schools, because apparently, with the exception of Michigan, the guy is an offensive genius. I mean, these guys, they score and they hurt you when they score. It's not just, obviously, a comparison perhaps not based on their history, Pete, but based on, Harbaugh, when he was at Michigan, he did the same sort of thing, but he didn't have the wide receiver core that this guy has, to your point, because that freshman is about as good as a freshman ever has been at 6'3" and 218 pounds. And he pulled them out of the fire when Notre Dame was trying to come back, and they did that 56-yard play to basically hold on to the ball, Pete, and then go down and kick that field goal to make it a 2-score game, and it's over. Not enough time on the clock. So, yeah, congratulations to them. Congratulations to Notre Dame for getting there, because most people would have counted them out long ago.
Yep. Absolutely. Yep, it was fun, and they will do some tweaks for sure, John.